like Olympic gold. Rap it smooth on the floor like a jazz song. Witness greatness, look up in LeBron home. Remember next time for you doubt us. That only made me go John Jones. HGH, I got the shortcut. God on my side, you got bad luck. Look at how they all doubt us, yeah, they doubt us, yeah. Underrated, we the underdogs, underestimated, yeah. Underrated, we the underdogs, underestimated, we the ones, yeah, we the ones, we the ones, yeah, we the ones, yeah.
Just a sentimental kid with a little bit of attention deficit. Hyperactive disorder, always out of order. I never had a chance though, but I would've wished on every single sad song. Never really knowing the moments I was groaning was zoning by the opponent. Opponent kids like me, Satan sees an opportunity, making me feel immunity. As long as my community can sin like me, there's nothing more you need than you can be at peace for your life. And realize I was swallowing
Ladies and gentlemen, your Los Angeles Kings.
Welcome back, Kings fans, to another episode of Tape to Tape, where it is Casual Friday. Carrlyn, happy Casual Friday.
I can't believe I took off my Joy Division shirt for this.
Yeah. I was hoping. So I've tried that line now on producer Chris and you. Nobody's picked up on it. Of course, it is not Friday; it's Thursday.
But
That's how casual it is on Fridays. Anyway, that's the line.
I love the sweater, Jesse. It looks great. It's a good look on you.
It's a hoodie, don't you know? Anyway, we got a lot of ground to cover, but before we do, as usual, Carrlyn, I have a question for all the Kings fans out there. LA Kings fans, do you love the LA Kings? Well, here's your chance to prove it, because Mercury Insurance is on the hunt for Kings super fans. You can go to mercuryinsurance.com/Kings to learn how you can win some great prizes and show the world that you are the ultimate Kings super fan. The Mercury Superfan promotion is live now through March 15th. You can submit images or videos on Instagram or Twitter, or as I said, at mercuryinsurance.com/Kings. Multiple weekly winners will be chosen at random to receive prizes such as an LA Kings merchandise pack, autographed memorabilia, virtual meet and greet with a player. 8 lucky finals will be selected by Mercury to move on to the finals, where fans will vote to decide who will be crowned the grand prize winner and the ultimate LA Kings superfan. That grand prize winner will receive a luxury box at home, which includes a 55-inch screen Toshiba television, 4 Adidas silver team-signed jerseys, a $500 Blaze Pizza gift card, and as we've talked about before, Carrlyn, a $500 McDonald's Arch card, which will buy just an awful lot of sausage McMuffins, and you can win tons of other McDonald's swag. So the question is, Carrlyn, do you love the LA Kings?
I love them so much.
Then why don't you marry them? No, go to mercuryinsurance.com/Kings to enter the super fan contest. Now, Carrlyn, we are going to start off with a Would You Rather, and it relates directly back to the game that the Kings lost, unfortunately, last night to the Arizona Coyotes. And so the question is this: would you rather lose like an 8-0 or a 9-1 game, or would you prefer to lose the way they did last night, 3-2 in a close game where they were trying to tie it up down the stretch?
You'd want the close game, Jesse. I feel like the blowout, like the 9-1 or the 8-1, says a lot more about the lack of fight in a team, right? A close game like last night, that just shows that they're still in it all the way to the end, even if the score doesn't reflect in that way. But what is there a trick to that question, or is that
I feel like your answer is the right answer, but in many ways, Carrlyn, you and I are very different people.
Oh, of course, I love to see the world burn.
I would prefer the blowout loss, and part of the reason why is, as I was watching the game last night and they have that turnover that leads to the third goal, I thought to myself, that's the game winner right there. The Kings are going to come back. They're going to manage to score a second goal, but that's going to be the one that burns. That's going to be the one that stings, and I hate that. I would much rather have a game where you walk away, you lose 8-0 or 7-2 or whatever it is, and you dust your hands and you go, well, let us never speak of it again. There's nothing to be learned from that. It was just a total waste of a game, and we don't ever have to think about it. I don't like the ones where it's a gut punch and you think, oh, man, if we had just done that one thing differently, we could have won. But from a coaching standpoint, I think you're probably right, Carrlyn. I think you'd like to see the team play with a little heart and a little gumption like we saw last night.
For sure. 8-1 is still a gut punch. That's
sure. It's just a different game. It's more of a smack to the back of the head, I think.
Yeah, and we didn't stipulate how all those goals would have been scored either. So if those were scored on gut punching turnovers, then you never know how you feel after an 8-1 loss either. Yeah. So.
Well, we're not here to dwell on losses and negativity. We do want to name a King of the Week. 3 games, unfortunately, no wins in those games, but a point out of it, and strong play from one of the veterans who needs to play strongly, and that is Drew Doughty with a couple of goals in the last 3 games. So let's take a look at that.
Iafallo settles the bouncing puck, defended by Dumba. Iafallo around the boards to Kopitar. He tried to pass and hit a leg. Comes to Kempe at the blue line. Back for Kopitar along the wall. Rink wide feed, Doughty. Back to Kempe up top. Big stop, Cocken, and they score the rebound. Drew Dowdy on the power play. And that's a big goal to get the
build a little bit of team confidence right here. So the Kings get the rebound. Cockenen gets a piece of it, but you can see, and even though the rebound shoots off to the side, it shoots right to the position of Dowdy on the one-timer.
Kopitar drifts across. On the back for Dowdy. Oh, walk the line. Dowdy to Kempe in the circle. Back for Dowdy. One-timer, score!
In the offseason, the extended offseason, his shot. Watch him come closer. He moves across to Kempe. And then he gets himself, and he's ready to shoot the puck right away. That might be the biggest difference right here. I don't think he gets a piece of anyone. Over the pad, under the block.
That was nice.
A heck of a goal there by Drew Doughty. And I'm not sure what's more impressive, that he's worked on his shot and is starting to nail these, or like you said, that lunge there to score that first one. I can't do that.
The lunge is nice. I always love a good old drop knee to get it into the net. It's just that extra added finesse where you're like, all right, it's already hard enough to score, but to do it off axis like that, that's even more difficult. And he just makes it look easy. And that's why he's Drew Doughty, honestly.
Yeah. And he talked about working on his shot in the offseason. And, Dooley, Zach Dooley, our very own Zach Dooley, had a great stat. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's something like 18 points in 21 games or something like that. Drew Doughty making a strong case for himself to be considered, back to being Drew Doughty. And so congratulations to Drew Doughty, this week's King of the Week. So congrats to him. And hopefully we've got 2 games coming up against Anaheim and St. Louis, I believe, in the next week. Hopefully we'll see a bit more points from him and a few more wins on the board from the Kings. We are going to be joined in a moment by John Hoven, a.k.a. the Mayor. He's going to talk to us about the rain, about some future moves that the Kings may or may not be making. In fact, you know what? Never mind in a bit. Let's go ahead and bring the Mayor on right now. John Hoven joining us now remotely from a wall of rocks behind him. How you doing, Mayor?
I'm doing great, but, I was thinking about Carl earlier, talking about Joy Division. I don't know if the show right now should be about disorder or maybe these days. I don't know. There's a lot going on in the Kings net.
That's a different show for a different day. Oh, my gosh.
Do what we can, Carl.
We could talk about music all day, couldn't we?
We could. It would be great. But let's talk hockey instead.
Well, I wasn't planning on talking about music, but let me ask you guys this question real quick. I was looking at, I can't remember which team now, but they had some team listed the goal songs for each of the players, and there were a lot of. Yes, thank you. That's what it was. And I thought a lot of the picks were great, but I don't believe for a second that all of them were made by the players. Some of them were just way too clever. And so I guess my question, John, for you, first one is, should players be allowed to pick their own goal songs, or should somebody from the team pick them for them?
Well, everybody should be allowed to pick their own goal song, except Dustin Brown, of course, because he went with Jump, Jump a couple of years ago. And I had a private conversation with Brownie and was trying to get him to switch it up. He even asked for a suggested list, and I gave him 10 songs to pick from. But for whatever reason, I don't know if Nicole was involved or what, but he stuck with Jump, Jump. So it's become sort of a running joke on Twitter. But yeah, let players. I mean, Gabe Velarde did a great job picking his goal song. He went with Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads. So some guys do a great job at it.
Well, Dustin Brown. Sorry, go ahead, Carrlyn.
I was just gonna say, give us the best one off that list of 10 songs.
Mix of everything. I went with a little Face to Face. I had some Social D on there. I also had some Guns N' Roses. I think we had Live Wire by Motley Crue. I mean, I tried to give him a good mix of things that might appeal to the fan base. But I don't know. He didn't take one of them. But he's scoring, so I guess we'll call it even for right now.
Alone. Exactly. We'll just let it be.
That's right. I was going to say, with Dustin Brown's goal scoring, the LA Kings power play has jumped up the standings.
Nice.
So, John, I was having a conversation the other day about why the LA Kings power play is so successful this season, and off the top of my head, the first thing that occurred to me was, Dustin Brown. I mean, is there a more complicated answer than that?
I think there's a little bit more. I mean, Doughty talked about it after the game last night, saying how he moved from the middle over to the flank. And I also think they're using Kopitar a little bit differently this year. He normally plants himself up along that wall, but getting him over to the other side, the left side, it puts him in a little bit of a better shooting angle. And although most of the goals have been coming more, I think, from Doughty and from Kempe and things like that, it does give Kopitar a chance to be more involved in that power play. So I think the real difference is going to be when some of these younger players start working in and they can have an effective second power play unit because they're going to need more than just that top power play to produce.
Let's talk about some of those younger players. Rasmus Kupari had started out on fire with the Reign, then was moved to the taxi squad as when the team went on the road trip. Didn't get any playing time. Went back down to the Reign, played last night, and is back on the taxi squad today. But it looks like he may actually get a shot at the lineup soon.
Yeah, look, there were a lot of people that were confused about him getting called up on that road trip, and they were disappointed that he didn't get a chance to play, and why not? People have been excited to see Rasmus Kupari since the Kings took him in the first round of the draft a couple of years ago, but, a little bit of a setback there. Last year, he was injured at the World Junior Championships, and normally when you see a player come over from Europe, they're going to want to spend about a full year in the American League and adjusting to the North American game. We heard Coach Mike Stothers talk about Kupari needing to make adjustments. He was a little too razzle-dazzle last year, and even John Robleski, the new coach of the Ontario Reign, talked about that during the preseason. But the reality is that Kupari was called up only because Anderson Dolan went out injured. If you remember, Kupari didn't start that road trip with them. So this year, just because of COVID and the protocols and things that can happen, they're carrying extra players. The Kings are taking extra players on the road with them. And it's not just about taking bodies. It's about taking players that they would feel comfortable if in almost an emergency type situation, they can put into the lineup. And so Kupari was that player, given his performance in the early part of the season in the American League, that he went on the road trip. But he hadn't practiced enough, and McClellan just didn't have enough confidence yet to put him in the lineup. But today it looks like after practice, he's going to be put into the lineup for either tomorrow night or the second game, if not both. And it looks like he's going to center a line playing with Adrian Kempe and with Carl Grundstrom. So we'll have to see how that sort of shakes out. But Kupari is a very exciting player. He's one of those guys that you're on the edge of your seat most of the time when the puck is on his stick because something's going to happen.
John, I was going to say, Todd talked this morning after practice, like you were mentioning, and he sounded extremely confident that we'd see him soon. So we can't predict when exactly, but what you're saying sounds correct. Real soon, so possibly tomorrow. And for Kings fans who aren't familiar with him, what's one of his biggest assets that they should keep an eye on once he actually cracks into a game?
Well, creativity, speed, and he really has a great shot. I've long thought that he's probably going to end up on the wing more than center once he eventually cracks the NHL lineup on a consistent basis. And, that really wouldn't be too much of a surprise when you consider how many centers they have. Kupari was really outstanding at that World Juniors a couple of years ago, although Mikey Anderson wouldn't want to talk about it because it was Finland that ended up winning the gold medal in that game that was played up in Vancouver against Mikey Anderson's Team USA. But Kupari is a very dynamic player, very exciting. Like I said, when the puck is on his stick, he's very creative with it. And as long as he's not doing the dipsy doodles type stuff, you can get away with that on a European size sheet because you have a little bit more space, but you have a half a second, as a lot of players will tell you, to make a play. So keep an eye on him. And really, the fact that he's playing with two guys that can help get him the puck. Adrian Kempe can shoot it once it's on his stick. And then Grundstrom, who is almost like a mini Dustin Brown, circa 2012. Grundy can do it all, or Sergey, as Brownie calls him now, wearing 91. So there's a lot to be excited about with Kupari. But I do just want to put the brakes on everybody and sort of remind them, young player, chillax everybody. If he doesn't get a hat trick in his first game, it doesn't mean that Kupari's a bust. He's going to be okay.
John, I've seen you reference the multiple tiers or layers of quote unquote kids when people say play the kids. And Jim Fox referenced it on a recent episode of All the Kings Men. He talked about the fact that because the Kings have drafted so well and so high recently, you've got guys like Quentin Byfield and Arthur Kaliev and Alex Turcotte, that these are the new quote unquote toys in the sandbox, that a guy like Kupari almost gets overlooked, right? But he's still a first round draft. What was he, 20th overall, I think, in the first round in 2018? Mm-hmm. So, he still brings a high pedigree to the table, even if he's not, top of mind when it comes to the kids, when people say play the kids, right?
Well, that's the challenge with that phrase, play the kids, because people like to latch onto things sometimes when they're not completely understanding what that term means. So play the kids can almost mean a million different things because it depends who you're talking with. And you're absolutely right, Jesse. Kupari is a guy who sort of is getting lost in the shuffle among Kings fans because they tend to be excited by the shiny new toy, as you mentioned, Turcotte and Byfield and even Kaliev, who had a game with the Kings earlier this year. But it is really a tier system, and there's really waves that are there. So the two most ready players among the forwards, in my opinion, would be Rasmus Kupari and Mikey Eyssimont. There's another player that we don't really get to hear about. But again, when a player graduates out of college or out of junior, they need an adjustment period in the American League. And there's not a set timetable. For some players like a Mikey Anderson, you can go to the American League, you can play half a season, and you can be ready. For other players, it might take you 2, it might take you 3 years. Heck, look at Austin Strand, unrestricted free agent, not a high draft pick, but here's a player who had to spend a couple of years in the American League and really sort of figure things out. And now he's opened up a lot of eyes, not only on the in LA Kings management, but even players like Drew Doughty singing his praises. So every player has their own path. Kupari, I think, would have had a call up last year in the second half of the season had he not been injured at the World Juniors like we talked about. So you have to pay attention to those tiers. But from a cupboard standpoint, the Kings cupboard has never been more stocked, even if you went back to when Dean Lombardi took the team over in 2006, and they did a great job sort of restocking the system, if you will. It's never been as stacked as it is right now. They have an overabundance. It sounds weird, almost too many prospects, and they're going to have to try to find a way to work all of those kids in over the next couple of years.
Now, when one of the kids gets to come up and plays in the lineup, somebody like a Gabe Velarde, right? How can Kings fans kind of curtail their expectations to maybe relax a little bit? Like you're kind of saying for people to do with Kupari, even though he hasn't even been there yet. We saw this a little bit with Gabe, where people were kind of almost like, why isn't he scoring? Why isn't he scoring? How relaxed do Kings fans need to be about someone like him who's just trying to establish themselves right now in the NHL?
Yeah, it's like Mikey Anderson. I always point back to him because Mikey Anderson and Gabe Velarde have set unrealistic expectations. And if you go back, it sounds weird to say, but a generation ago to Drew Doughty, who broke into the league, they're outliers. They're not normal. And so they set false expectations for fans. There was somebody on Twitter earlier today who was talking about if Byfield doesn't make the NHL next year, he's basically a bust. And I was like, the kid's 18 years old. It wasn't that long ago that coaches and scouts would tell you that players mature about 24, 25 years old. So let's give the kid a chance here. He's really not even supposed to be in the American League this year. If this was a normal season, taxi squads didn't exist, and the OHL was up and running, Kaliev and Byfield would both be back in the Ontario League right now. And while some fans might be upset about that, the reality is they'd be probably showing very well playing against their peers. So You have to remember that when you're moving from junior, when you're moving from college, guys come in at different ages. And that age is important. But what's even more important is the experience of who you've been playing against. So if you've been over in Europe, you might have been in a junior league, or you might have been in one of the big time leagues playing against men. And that makes a huge difference. Guys like Sammy Fagemo played against men over there, so he might be more ready than perhaps a player who's coming over like a Jacob Mavari, for example. Two different positions, obviously, forward and defense, but you have to set the expectations accordingly. And again, a guy like Gabe Velarde, he comes in on his first shift, he scores, and everybody thinks, oh, that's the way it's supposed to work. And as we say on Twitter, look, this isn't Xbox. So not everybody is Mikey Anderson, not everybody is Gabe Velarde. Even if you're a first-round draft pick, it takes time for you to settle in, and that's why you see so many NHL coaches bring these guys in and put them in a bottom six role or even a third pairing if they're a defenseman, because they want to break them in, a little bit easy, regardless of how successful they were at other stages. And the last thing I'll just say about this, remember this, a very important point. The jump from junior or college to the AHL is far more difficult than the jump from the AHL to the NHL. Yeah. And that's why it's important for guys to succeed in the American League before they graduate to the NHL, because the American League is the second best league in the world, and it's full of men. So kids that are coming in from junior and college, they have a big step up to the American League. And that step to the NHL, while guys are quicker, faster, better, that step is not as great as it is when you first come out of junior or first come out of college.
Well said.
I think, John, two real quick examples to illustrate what you're talking about from two different generations. Kirill Kaprizov spent, 5 years in the KHL before coming over, and he looks great. No, I don't think anybody would begrudge him those 5 years. And even Andrzej Kopitar, where he didn't play in the NHL the first year after he was drafted. So the notion that Byfield has to play right away is a bit crazy. But, John, thank you so much for joining us. Always a ton of info, ton of insight. We will talk to you again soon. Check him out at Mayor's Manor or occasionally on the LA Kings Insider or Kings of the Podcast. Thanks, John.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Bye, John.
That was John Hoven, a.k.a. the mayor, a.k.a. the hardest working man on the internet. Carrlyn, you and I have known him a long time. Never at a lack of passion for communicating what he wants to say.
What I love about him is that I know we call him the mayor, but I also kind of think of him like the dad. Like if you need some good dadding, some good scolding, some good parenting about how to be a good fan that can tolerate and withstand some of the changes the team is making or new players and old players, John breaks it down in such a dad-like way where you feel like you're listening to your parent yell at you about why something is important. So he takes numbers out of the equation sometimes and puts more feelings and thought into the way that he expresses things. And I really appreciate that about him because he's like the fans' dad. I don't know. That's how I view him. And just talking to him just brings a unique perspective, and it's always appreciated.
Yeah, I guess I know he'll probably not want me to say this, but since I actually know why he's the quote unquote mayor, to me, he'll always be the mayor. Anyway,
are you allowed to say on camera?
I don't think so. No, okay. I think he'd prefer I didn't. So there you go. It's another mystery for Kings fans to ponder. But Carrlyn, the Kings find themselves, I believe, in 5th place as I glance down at my phone. Currently, or I guess in 6th place now after that loss to Arizona last night. But I think more competitive for a playoff spot than certainly I was expecting at this point in the season. They've played very well against St. Louis. They've collected some points against Minnesota, despite Minnesota collecting more points from them. And obviously that 6-game winning streak did a ton to help them out. But moving forward, now the question, obviously we want the Kings to win every game they play. But with a shortened season and with fewer and fewer games remaining, and with every team only playing other teams within the West Division, I think the question is, who do we root for the best possible outcome for the Kings? So looking forward at this coming week, that is the question: is who do we root for? And I'm here to tell people who to root for, Carrlyn. So I'm just going to blow through this as quick. No, I'm just looking at my phone. Oh, you can't see it there. Hold it in front of me. I'm looking at my phone. But Anaheim plays Colorado while the Kings are taking on the Coyotes. And, I think at this point, I want Colorado to collect as many points as possible to put them in a huge lead because they're a team I expect to make the playoffs. Sure. And I want Anaheim with a broken spirit when they play the Kings next week. So I'm rooting for the Avalanche over the Ducks.
There we go. That's a great way to look at it. You want the teams that would be expected to be in to just keep chugging along, and teams like Anaheim, bury them, crush them, make sure they do not enter.
To that point, Vegas is playing San Jose. Obviously, even if it weren't a playoff spot at risk here, we would want Vegas to beat San Jose. We don't like San Jose, although we don't really like Vegas either. But the difficult one is Minnesota versus Arizona. And they play 2 games against each other, as to be expected. And honestly, at this point, Carrlyn, I don't know. I think I'm going to pull for Arizona to win just because the Kings don't have as many games left against the Wild. There's only 1 game left against the Wild.
Yes.
So,
but I feel like the Wild will be the team that we could see entering into the playoffs over Arizona. So Arizona to me would be classified like a San Jose Sharks or an Anaheim Ducks. And I want to say it was Todd McClellan recently after they had just played them that the Wild looked like a playoff team. So I'd hate to root against them and have them end up being the ones that would crush our dreams. So I feel like
ultimately, like I said, it could go either way. And I just think there's more chances against Arizona to stop that team from getting points. Okay. And only 1 chance to stop Minnesota. So I wouldn't get mad at anybody for, like I said, for going either way on that one. But I'm going to root for, who did I say? For Minnesota.
You said for Arizona. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I meant. Yeah.
We're gonna go split 7-inch on this. I'm going Minnesota. I want them to rack up the points and for everybody else to beat Arizona.
Right. Then, good thing you mentioned that because then the Arizona then faces Colorado, and obviously we'll be pulling for Colorado in that matchup.
There we go.
So go Avalanche against the Coyotes, and then the San Jose Sharks take on the St. Louis Blues. This is one of those rare cases where I am going to root for the bottom feeder over the playoff team because I think the Blues might actually be vulnerable depending on their injury situation and how well the Kings play against them. And I don't think San Jose is going to be any good in the long run. So I'm going to root for San Jose to pick up a meaningless win for them, but a crushing loss for the Blues.
Oh, just some hurt feelings.
Yeah, well,
hurt feelings. All right.
I'll never like the Blues from '98. And then Vegas plays Minnesota. Obviously, we want Vegas to stop Minnesota from getting as many points as possible. And the Ducks root for the King, or play for the Kings, excuse me. And of course, everybody rooting for the Kings in that scenario. I think that's a no-brainer there. So there you go. That is this week's route to the playoffs for the LA Kings. Carrlyn, before we take off, we do have two games, or we've got one more game. Sorry, not one more game against Arizona. That was a single game. We've got 2 games against the Blues, 2 games against the Ducks. Any predictions as to how the Kings will do in the coming week?
2 games against the Blues, 2 games against the Ducks. If you remember Drew Doughty's comments about St. Louis, he was extremely confident in their ability to beat them. And I honestly think that the Kings could get a couple wins under their belts here. Knowing where the Ducks are right now and knowing how they're having a really hard time getting goals on the board, getting established with their young group that they've got, I don't want to see them as something easy to defeat, but I think that those games could be winnable. And same with the Blues, just seeing how their Kings mentality has kind of changed. And Drew Doughty, I can't exactly remember how he phrased it, but it was almost just like oh yeah, no, we can beat the Blues. All right. Like it was more of like a mindset thing rather than a performance issue. So it's something that I could see the Kings taking multiple points out of between the two of those teams.
Well, I want to say 4-0 over the next 4 games, but that
I didn't
feels
want to go
like
too aggressive like that.
I
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not going to, because if that doesn't happen, then I'll be accused of jinxing it, and I will feel guilty, even though I don't believe in jinxes. So I'll say 3-1 over the next 4 games.
3-1. Okay. I won't say a number because I don't want to jinx it.
All right.
Great performance.
Fair enough.
Yeah, great performance.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
We're rooting for fun games, right? That's what we want. We
Rooting
want to
for
enjoy
points.
watching it anyway.
Yeah.
Tune in next week, Kings fans. We will find out how close Carrlyn and I came in our projections. We'll name another King of the Week. We'll have another guest, and we'll tell you all about the Mercury Superfan Contest again. For Carrlyn Bathe, I am Jesse Cohen. This has been Tape to Tape. We'll talk to you next week.